My name's Jill Rowe, and in this episode of the Different Podcast, Steve Chalke and I go big on Christmas. From our favourite Christmas movies to the most random of gifts we've given to the power of the Christmas story as we explore it as the greatest revolution the world has ever seen and ever been invited to participate in. We see it as the ultimate peace plan where love wins. There was a whole load of joy and laughter in this episode, as well as some unexpected discoveries. Happy Christmas, Steve.
Happy Christmas, Jill.
How exciting.
It's very exciting, isn't it? How long have you been celebrating Christmas for?
1st of December. I'm pretty loyal to the old Advent system.
Yeah, but you know...
Do you mean years or do you mean...
No, I mean this year around, because, you know, I was with a bunch of vicars the other day and kept saying, well, we're in Advent and we're waiting, you know, for that. And I said to them, I think everybody else has got there. Do you know, like every television programme, everything for weeks has been
Netflix, choose between your Christmas films.
Yeah, full on celebration, Christmas trees everywhere, tinsel and snow. But the old, you know, we're waiting, we're almost there.
It's really silly, but I get really excited because it reminds me, I think, of being a kid. You know, the Argos catalogue. Went into Sainsbury's the other day. There was a version of the Argos. I thought they'd stopped it. And what I'm waiting for, and I never watch anything that I circle, but the Radio Times Christmas edition. Isn't that sad?
It is. Do they still make it?
Yeah.
Oh, do
it's
they?
A thing, Steve.
Blimey. Is it a thing?
It is a thing. The Radio Times. Make a cup of tea and circle all the things you know you're never going to watch, basically.
Yeah. Okay. No, well, you can watch everything on playback, can't you? So it doesn't matter, does it? What I'm hoping for is my favourite film.
Which is?
Die Hard. It's the best Christmas film ever, all time. And people argue that it's not a Christmas film. But look online, ask the top 10 Christmas films. Die Hard's always at the top.
Maybe that poll, though, Steve, is just, it's popular. It doesn't make it a Christmas film.
No, because at the end, it's all snowing, you know, after they've killed everybody.
Which is obviously what Christmas is all about.
You know,
snow and killing.
Yeah, but, you know, let it snow, let it snow. Bruce Willis and Let It Snow. It's very peaceful at the end.
I really like Home Alone.
Oh, yeah, no, I like that as well. I like Home Alone. I like Elf. Yeah, you know, I like...
Nativity.
I like others. I tell you, I like A Christmas Carol. And the film version, there's several film versions and some, you know, there's the Muppet one and all that kind of stuff. Yeah, that's okay. But the one that's got that song in, Thank You Very Much, you know, when they dance on Scrooge's coffin, you know, in his, his car. I think that's a great song. Thank you very much. Anyway, there you go.
You do love Christmas,
I do love Christmas. And a real Christmas tree. Do you have a plastic one?
Oh, no, real. Always real.
I thought you were going to be a heretic. But, you know, I like a proper Christmas tree.
Absolutely. And I like it all particular colours. And so, yeah.
There you go. Well, you get your miserers who don't like it. And, you know, the people I was talking to, well, we're still waiting. You're going to miss the boat because everybody's there. Join in.
But we love Christmas, don't we? But so I thought it'd be really good today. So we've got your favourite film, my favourite film, to just dive in a little bit into that Christmas story, because I think there's loads of stuff to do with the Christmas story that we don't properly know and understand. But it's really interesting when you dive into it.
Yeah, the story's great. The myths that have grown up, you know, around it, angels bright and glowing and, you know, donkeys everywhere and you know, all this kind of stuff. And I always say to people, we turn the story of Christmas into this unbelievable myth and then we don't believe it.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's stupid, whereas, you know, it's very strange.
It's weird. Yeah. There's this big theme in the story about outsiders, though, isn't there? Which is one of, I know for you and me, that's like there's all these themes that are really powerful in it. Who are the outsiders in the story?
Well, just about everybody, you know, plays a central part.
Yeah.
Mary's an outsider. Joseph's an outsider. Jesus is, you know, born in an animal feeding trough. There's no mention of a stable.
No.
It's just, you know, feeding trough in a cave or in a yard or whatever. They then become refugees, etc., etc.
Chased
out.
The
whole story is about the people that get looked past by all the powerful. The story of the Magi that we turned into 3 wise men for some reason. So
more likely to be Zoroastrians. Is that right?
Yeah. Well, and as people say to me, where on earth do you find 3 wise men? It's kind of thing. But these people, however many they were, they come looking for Jesus and they go to see the king. They go to the palace because that's where they think it should all happen. But the action isn't at the centre of society; it's at the edges of society. So it's with the marginalised.
Yeah. So take the shepherds. Why were they outsiders?
Shepherds were outside. There's a really interesting thing. I promised Cornelia, my wife, that I'm never, ever going to write another book.
You do this every time you write a book.
But if I ever did write another book, I would write it about exactly that. Not necessarily the shepherds, but shepherds were sinners. You see, they were called sinners. Yeah. And we've reached the complete, in my view, completely the wrong end of the stick about what a sinner was. We think that being a sinner is some moral deficit or something, I've sinned and all that. And people are riddled with guilt about all sorts of things. The term sinner in Jesus' culture simply meant outsider. Yeah. That's all it was. So Jesus hung about with the sinners. Yeah. It means he hung about with the outsiders. Yeah. The have-nots, the people who were excluded, looked past. Yeah. In fact, for me, all my life, that's what's driven the formation and the development of Oasis. Yeah. So our job is to hang about with everybody who nobody wants to hang about with because they're really worth hanging about with, because they have so much creativity, so much to bring, and you're so denuded of depth by not knowing them. Yeah. So Jesus hung around with the sinners, and sinner just means those that are looked past, those that are excluded. And I think that's why I say if I ever wrote another book, that's what I write it about, because I think the church has got the wrong end of the stick big time. Do you see what I mean?
Yeah.
Moral judgment when actually they should be heading the other way to include the excluded.
Like that's where God is there.
Yeah.
Right. So I was thinking as well, it's always been such a point for me that the shepherds are the sinners. The first thing that they hear as outsiders is don't be afraid.
Yeah.
And I just think the message we give to outsiders so often is be afraid. Like you're not worthy. You're irrelevant. You're rubbish. That's why you're on the edge. And yet in this story, the message is...
They come centre. They're the first to be told this news. They're right bang slap in the centre.
Yeah.
And it's worth saying that they were outsiders because they did a smelly job.
Yeah.
Because it was at the bottom of the pile because they weren't paid much. It was the job that, you didn't want your children to have and all that kind of stuff. So these are, blimey, not them. These are the 11 plus failures.
Yeah.
These are, I got no GCSEs. These are the people that were headed nowhere. And yet God chooses them ahead of anyone else to tell this good news to. And he chooses a teenager, Mary, who's pregnant. It's amazing. Isn't it? So it's
such a reversal, isn't it?
Yeah, it's everything. A litany of reversal.
Yeah, and it's the complete opposite of the way that we look at things in society today.
Yeah, and there's Joseph. This kid isn't mine. I don't really understand all this stuff, but I'm sticking with her.
I'm here.
Yeah, I'm not going anywhere. So it's the story of the brave. It's the story of the people that take on all the powers that be and stick with their story and then get persecuted for it.
Yeah. Just before we pick up on that bit, what's your favourite carol?
I tell you what my favourite carol is. And it's not just a favourite carol, it's a particular verse of a carol.
I think we might have the same one here.
So my favourite carol is O Holy Night. But let me tell you something about everybody likes O Holy Night. But do you know something? They always leave out the verse that's most meaningful. Yeah. When I say always, so you can listen to endless recordings of this, and they leave out the verse. In fact, a couple of Christmases ago, on the Radio 2 show, Zoe Ball, I go in on her show. Zoe's retiring this Christmas. She's just finishing now in a few days' time. So I went in and I did this thing about Oh Holy Night and the verse that everybody leaves out. And I asked them, because I sometimes do, I do something around a song. I say, can you play a song? And I said, do a version of Oh Holy Night. And they said, oh, that's great. And I can't remember who it was they got on, but they couldn't find a version of Oh Holy Night with the verse in.
Can I just say, we always sing this verse, don't we?
Yeah. Radio 2 couldn't find.
Isn't that mad?
A version of Oh Holy Night by any famous, big recording star that contained this verse. So I'll quote you the verse.
Please do. I love it.
Because this verse says, it says this, fall on your knees, hear the angel voices, the messengers' voices, O night divine, the night when Christ was born. And then this verse says, truly he taught us to love one another. His law is love and his gospel is peace. Chains shall he break, for the slave is our brother, and in his name all oppression will cease. That verse was written in America. The parts of the song are French, I think, but that verse was written in America because of the struggle against slavery, or it became popular in America because of the struggle against slavery. And then what happened in some of the southern states, they started leaving that verse out.
Wow.
Because they didn't want to believe that the slave is our brother. Yeah. And that in his name, all oppression shall cease. Yeah. And as the song has become more and more and more and more popular, I mean, it's everywhere, isn't it? It's amazing. Even today, producers will say to artists, you can't sing that verse because it will divide people. Wow. Don't talk politically. Don't talk about it. But it is political. Well, the whole Christmas story is political. That's the point. So leaving the verse out, which is, I think, the thing I was talking to Zoe about on that morning, leaving the verse out isn't just leaving the verse out, it's leaving Christmas out of Christmas. Because Christmas is about oppression ceasing. It is about the fact that the slave, the outsider, the sinner is my brother and my sister. So it's like singing about Christmas at the same time as denying what Christmas is. Yeah. And there's another line in it, because it's my favourite as well, Steve, where it talks about the soul feeling its worth. Yes. And that, those two things go together, don't they? It's such a brilliant carol, and we should sing every verse properly. Yeah, exactly. You can't kind of cut and paste, edit out stuff and then say it's the real deal. No. It's not the real deal. And it's missed the whole soul of this thing. So this is political. Yeah. And it is a reversal and it's a revolution. And I think that we miss often, because we just don't understand. We're not taught it. We don't understand it because we're not taught it. There's a much more powerful political reality to the story of Christmas, isn't there? And the birth of Jesus and the era, and can you tell us a bit like the Maccabean and all of that? Yeah, I mean, the Jewish people had always struggled because they'd been slaves, basically. They were slaves in Egypt, then they get back to their land. Then they're slaves of the Greeks who take over their land. By the time Jesus is born, the Romans are in charge, but they're always put down. They always have nothing. They're always hoping against hope that things will change. So they're longing for this Messiah to be born. And the Messiah is a strange phrase. It's become a very religious phrase for us, hasn't it, in our culture. But the Messiah for these Jewish people back then was the one who would save them from those who'd enslaved them, the oppressors, and put them down. And then Jesus is born, and people say he is the Messiah, and they say he can't be the Messiah because he's got to be a warrior. He's got to be a king. He's got to carry a bigger sword than anybody where he's else. From. He's the wrong kind of stock from the wrong kind of place. It just doesn't work. And what the message of Christmas is all about is this isn't about being a warrior. Your weapon is love. Your weapon is service. It's about giving your life. And the message is, and God chooses the outcast, chooses the person no one looks to, everyone looks beyond. This is the message of Christmas. So it is political and it's social. It's saying to us, there's a great reversal that needs to take place because God is on the side of those that others count of no value.
And even that title, Prince of Peace, is a political, isn't it?
The whole thing. So it's not soft. It's not sentimental. It's not about, angels with nighties that they get from Marks and Spencer's, all kind of glowing. And, it's not about that. This is a rugged story about a great reversal. Yeah. In fact, in the account of these stories that's in what we call Matthew's Gospel, there's a song that's sung by Mary, and it's called the Magnificat, or we've called it the Magnificat. And she just says, the mighty are being brought down and the lowly are being lifted up, which of course is captured in that great verse, in that great Christmas carol, and therefore, and since has been rubbed out again. It's just bonkers. Absolutely. But I find it so motivating.
Yeah, completely.
Yeah. Even more motivating than Die Hard. I know everybody tells me off for liking Die Hard because it was all a bit of
I can just imagine you and Corny chatting about that one. No, she's not up for that.
She has different Christmas choices. She likes a rom-com, where they meet, there's loads of tinsel, they go and buy a Christmas tree together, they fall in love, then they fall out in the middle. That's how it goes. And for some reason, they all fall out in the middle. Yeah. And then she keeps watching. I say to her, why are we watching this? We know what's going to happen.
But you kind of could say the same about Die Hard. But anyway, let's just move on. What is your favourite Christmas food?
What is my favourite Christmas food? Well, it's not mince pies.
You're not a fan?
I'm not a fan of mince pies. I politely eat a mince pie if it's given to me, but I wouldn't be too bothered if I don't get a mince pie. I'll tell you what it actually is. Yeah, is what you have on Boxing Day and the day after.
No way! That's exactly the same as me.
Oh, is it?
Yeah, leftovers.
Yeah,
always the leftovers.
Yeah, and what Cornelia is really good at is making turkey curry. Whoa! Honestly, it's great. I love a curry because, I'm my Indianness. So, it's great.
Your dad would be proud.
Yeah. Turkey curry. Fantastic.
So it's all about the leftovers. Yeah. Boxing Day is the best for food on Christmas. Yeah, for sure. So there is also this thing in the story, isn't there, about the wonder of whoa, this is such a powerful story. How do you connect with that? It is a political call to action and all the rest of it, but there's this element of, wow, this sets us up, this stuff, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. My really good friend, Tony Campolo, who's a professor of sociology at Eastern University in Philadelphia, he died a month and a bit ago. And I remember, in fact, I've just written a piece for a newspaper about Tony, and I think I put this in it. They may have edited it out. I don't know. But I tell the story as I was once with Tony, and he was a great communicator and speaker. And speaking of Christmas, somebody came up to him. It must have been at Christmas time because they came up to him afterwards and they said, from what you said, just then, I remember them being quite angry. Do you believe in the virgin birth or not? Do you actually believe in the virgin birth? Because I was a little bit doubtful of whether you seemed to duck it and kind of stuff. And he said, do you know? He said, the thing is, when I stand in front of God, I don't think his first question to me is going to be, how strongly did you believe in the virgin birth? Answer, strongly believe. Believe, disbelieve, strongly disbelieve. Just tick one. He said, when I stand in front of God, I think he's going to ask me, did you work with those that no one else had time for? Were you there for the oppressed? Were you there for those who had nothing? Did you give yourselves Give yourself to the oppressed. I think that's the question God's a lot more interested in. It was a great, it was absolutely. A great answer. It was a great answer.
We get caught in the wrong stuff, don't we?
Yeah. And, some people choose to believe in a virgin birth and some people don't. What if the old ancient Hebrew word that gets translated virgin just happens to mean young woman?
Exactly.
Do you know something? It actually does.
I know. Just throw that in.
Just saying. That's what it means. It means young woman.
There's this song by some lyrics from Bruce Cockburn.
I get into a lot of trouble for saying that, but
it's fine. Well,
I don't mind getting into a lot of trouble. Remember the Outcasts?
Yeah,
it's all about. But
but that's what it means.
That is actually what it means.
Yeah. There's a song by Bruce Cockburn. It's called "The Cry of a Tiny Babe," and there's a line in it where it just talks about redemption ripping through the surface of time. And I've always for such a strong image, isn't it, of you're not alone. And redemption is just rips through time in this story, and we see the fullness of what love looks like.
Indeed. Can't say it better than that, Jill. So for me, this is a totally motivated story. Yeah. Because I grew up in churches, I went to endless churches. This is probably a bit too religious for some people, but I went to endless churches, and at Christmas time, they'd tell the story of Jesus' birth, and then they'd kind of whip through the years, and you'd suddenly, and he was born, and all that kind of stuff. But the important thing is that 33 years later, he hung dying on a cross, and you could give your life to Christ, and you might be redeemed, and or forgiven if you do, and if you don't, tough luck, kind of all this kind of stuff. And I could never understand it. Even as a kid, I couldn't understand it. I said, why don't you talk about Christmas? Why have you swapped this for a story about what you believed happened at Easter 33 years later? Talk about the Christmas story.
This.
Yeah. And I subsequently come to understand this story is just pure joy. It is the center of everything. God is with us, and God... Well, I was going to say, and God is in disguise, the disguise of a baby, but God's not in disguise. This is God.
This is it.
And now I'm getting boring. Let me tell you, one of my favourite authors who also died, I can't remember if it was the beginning of this year or the end of last year, his name was Jürgen Moltmann.
Oh, yeah.
And Jürgen Moltmann was a German theologian. And in the 1970s, he wrote a book called The Crucified God. And it's all about this, you see, that here is this God who's weak, who's born in an animal feeding trough, who's poor, who's not one of the elites, who, et cetera, et cetera. And then he makes this great statement about God. If God doesn't know pain, if God doesn't weep, if God doesn't suffer with us, then God is not greater than us. God is less than us. A God who doesn't suffer, a God who can't weep. That God is to be pitied, not worshipped. And the story that's behind Christmas is that God comes to us in the form of a weak and dependent baby. That's where you find God. That's who God calls us to imitate.
Yeah.
Not to go for the power.
Yeah, the pattern of life. And don't be afraid. Weirdest gift you have ever given, and I know the answer to this, weirdest gift you've ever given or received. Can I just tell you what give you a moment to think. But so this is this year. So next week it'll be Christmas. There are two people who are going to get a gift from me, which is a spade.
A spade?
What an awful present.
Do they like gardening?
Yes. Oh. So that's what I thought.
Is it a little one?
It was recommended in The Guardian.
Was it?
Yeah. And I thought, I'm gonna get that. It's like a mini spade. But it got high praise.
Oh, got high praise.
So off I went, bought two. thought of 2 people I could buy.
Oh, great. Well, I'm not going to ask who they're for because they might listen to this before they actually receive it.
Don't worry, Steve, it's not for you. So I know you're not a big fan of gardening.
No.
You like looking at a garden.
I like looking at gardens, but I'm not a big gardener. When I said no, I didn't mean no, I am a great gardener. I meant no, I'm not. If I never have to mow a lawn again in my entire life, I'll be very happy for that. But I like looking at great gardens. Anyway, no, like you said, this story because my wife tells everyone. But when we first got married in August, and then I got her a car, You
better explain what kind of car you got.
Yeah, it was a bad car, actually. We were so old. In those days, you could buy a car on a breaker's yard. Probably most people.
It wasn't a new car, basically, is what we're saying.
No. Most people probably don't even know what breaker's yard is. It's where you take old cars that,
Yeah, we're going to get squashed into a box.
I used to have an old battered car, and I used to sometimes go down the breaker's yard to buy bits, because the gearbox would go, and you go and get a gearbox or a mirror or whatever it is, and you bolt them on. You can't do it anymore; it's all illegal now. Because anyway, cars are too complicated now. But anyway, I went down to the breaker's yard, and there was this old Volkswagen Beetle there, just stood there, And then I looked in it, it seemed okay, and the engine's in the boot of a Volkswagen Beetle. This was a really old one with a split windscreen.
Yeah, nice.
Yeah, and the engine was warm. And then I looked in it, and the keys were there. So I got in it and I flicked the keys and the engine started. So I asked...
I'm having that.
I asked the bloke in charge. This is honestly true. This must have been... We got married in 1980, you see.
Yeah.
So, So I said to the guy, what about this? He said, someone's just left it. I said, can I buy it?
Way.
He said, 25 quid. Honestly. 25. I think he just wanted to get rid of it.
Get it off the side.
Yeah. So
for 25 quid,
I drove away in this car.
I
don't know if it was, kind of. Anyway, that's honestly true. Yeah. Well, because I could do third-party insurance off my car, kind of like. Anyway, so I got this car. This is a month or two after we've been married.
So
but the problem is it didn't have a fuel gauge
that worked, right?
Yeah. No, it just didn't have one at all. No, it's not there. And there was this little switch in the middle, and when you ran out of fuel, you switched the switch across, and it went for another 30 miles or something on a reserve tank, right? But there's no way of gauging it, and it guzzled fuel, and it kept running out. And then she got stranded several times. I had to come out and get her and all the rest of it. So she was really upset about this having a car.
You're really trying to justify this gift.
For Christmas, I bought her a petrol can and filled it up. So I bought her a gallon of petrol in a metal petrol can and then wrapped it up.
Oh, my gosh.
Yeah, I screwed up the top carefully so it didn't catch light under the Christmas tree. I gave her this petrol can full of petrol. And it was a really nice red one.
So it was even a Christmassy can.
And John, I was as thick as 2 short blokes. Probably still am. But I honestly thought she'd be happy because it would mean she would never break down again.
Steve, how did that play out?
She cried. And I learned a great lesson. Yeah.
Happy Christmas.
Yeah, I learned, Cornelia doesn't like function. You see, I like functional things. So if I like gardening and you bought me a spade, I'd love it. I like things that
work.
You bought me something and now I haven't got to buy it and I can use it. It's really good.
Yeah.
I learned that Cornelia is not that person.
I love it.
She didn't. And still mentions it, which is why you know the story.
Steve, if you were going to say to people just one thing about how to approach Christmas, what would you say to them?
Well, my little habit is before all the madness of Christmas Day, which I realise isn't for everyone. Some people just don't.
Yeah, it's it's a tough day actually.
Yeah, it's a very tough day because for some people, Christmas Day is a day spent without people that they wish that they were with or the fun that they wish that they were having. But I've got 10 grandchildren or so Christmas Day and Christmas is
hectic.
Pretty mad.
Yeah.
And what I try to do genuinely is I get up and I sit down and I read the Christmas story. I don't read it all in one day, it'd take too long. But it's the Christmas story happens in 2 of the Gospels, Matthew and in Luke. And I don't even aim to read everything in Matthew in one morning, just a section, and then the next day a section, and the next day. And sometimes I read a bit on Christmas Eve. So just in the quietness of a room without anyone there before it all gets bonkers, just read this story again, just to read those words of Mary we've talked about.
Yeah.
God brings down the mighty and he lifts up the lowly. And that's enough for me, really, I think. That is, as I'm able, my task to join in with and bring my little contribution to creating equality in a world that lacks it for so many.
Absolutely. And I think for me, similarly, I do a similar thing. And it always is remembering those words that were spoken to the outsiders, which was, don't be afraid. Let your soul feel its worth. And re-engaging with the story in the fullness of what the story is about is a gift. Thank you, Steve. Happy Christmas.
Happy Christmas, Jill.